Alright guys, how's it going? So today I'm in a 2016 Jaguar XE. Now this is the first XE I've ever owned. In fact, I've never even driven one before. And this is the long overdue replacement for the X-Type. It's the smallest saloon car that Jaguar offer. I'll be honest, I want to like it, I really do. I want to congratulate Jaguar on finally making a competent small saloon car. But I've got mixed feelings about it. So I'm going to try and stay objective and just try and tell you what it's like and see if I can come to some conclusion. So let's get going. The trouble is, the small saloon segment is a fairly overcrowded section of the market, and for years and years motoring journalists all over the world use the BMW 3 Series as the yardstick. And I agree to a certain extent, because the BMW 3 Series is the sportiest small saloon car that you can buy. So the trouble is, over the years, every manufacturer has made their own version stiffer and sportier, and as a result they can all go around the Nürburgring in an impressive time. And that all sounds fine, it all sounds like natural progression. But I think they've completely missed the mark. Think about who buys these small saloon cars. They're mainly bought by business people, aren't they? Who spend 5 hours a day in the car driving around the M25. They're not bothered about how quickly it can lap the Nürburgring. Most of them won't even have heard of the Nürburgring. They don't care about 0 to 60 times. They just want a comfortable car that's nice to drive, with cup holders and a USB charging point. That's all they want. They want something that's cheap to run, cheap to tax, and effortless. Actually, on top of all that, it's also got to impress clients when they meet them at Beaconsfield service station. Everything these days is too firm, too sporty, too uncomfortable. Everything's set up for speed rather than comfort, and I think that's where manufacturers are going wrong. Now this Jag is a 2016 model, and it's the Portfolio spec, which is the best spec you can get. And it's the only spec I could recommend, to be honest. Now, in my opinion, you should always go for a Jag in the best spec. This one has a 2-litre turbo diesel engine, which produces 180 horsepower. And I've got an 8-speed automatic gearbox. This model's also all-wheel drive. They also do a 3-litre petrol with 300 horsepower, which I haven't driven, but that would be the one I would want. And this particular version uses Jaguar Land Rover's new Ingenium engine, which they say doesn't need a service for 21,000 miles or 2 years. And I know that because I called Guy Salmon the other day to try and book this in for a service, and it wasn't due for another 12 months, which I can't really get my head around, but that's what they say. This 180 horsepower model does provide enough power. You've got plenty of power for overtaking on the motorway, which is the main concern of the people who buy these. Lots of reviews I've read on this car say that the all-wheel drive version makes too much road noise, but I think that's nonsense. Unless you're coming out of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, this is perfectly quiet and perfectly refined. You do hear a bit of engine noise. In fact, the engine does sound a little bit asthmatic, but it's a 4-cylinder diesel. They're all a little bit noisy. It's just what you get. A lot of the reviews that I've read complain about the rear legroom, or lack of. But again, I'm 5'10", and I've got loads of room back here. So unless you're transporting Peter Crouch on a regular basis, it's not going to be an issue. Regarding the styling, I love the styling of the front end. I think it looks aggressive. The way the bonnet sweeps low over the headlights, it looks like it's angry. It looks like it's frowning or scowling. I like the fact that when you're driving it, you can see the bonnet scoop. It makes you feel like you're in something powerful. It makes you feel like you're in a Jag. But what I don't like is the rear end. The XF, I think they got just right. It looks balanced and poised. Whereas with the XE, to try and make it a little bit smaller, they've given the rear end a bit of liposuction, and it just looks awkward, looks stubby. I mean, have a look for yourself and see what you think, but I don't like the look of the rear end of this at all. It looks unfinished, really. On the inside, I love how the dash wraps all the way around. It looks very stylish. The infotainment system's very good as well. It's quick to respond, the graphics are good, the resolution's good, but the rest of it, it's all very sensible and straightforward, and everything's where you'd expect it to be, which is a bit disappointing, really. It's all a bit Germanic. Some of the buttons have a satisfying click, but others feel a little bit cheap. I mean, if you look at the controls on the steering wheel, they feel hollow and brittle. They feel like they're controls from a 90s Game Boy. With this being a portfolio, you'd expect it to have every possible extra. Well, it doesn't. It's got some nice extras. I've got a heated steering wheel, I've got a reverse camera, I've got sat-nav, I've got heated seats. But, for example, I don't have power fold mirrors. So you've got to fold the mirrors in manually, by hand, like a caveman. Which is a bit stingy of Jaguar, don't you think? How much could it have cost, really, to just throw in a folding mirror motor? Another thing I don't like about the interior, the materials they've used around the gear selector and the handbrake lever and the volume control. They've used this cheap rubber that you'd expect to find on a Casio wristwatch, which isn't really in keeping with the rest of the cabin. So, do you see what I mean about it being a bit of a mixed bag? It would be a very sensible car to run, actually. In terms of fuel economy, it is very good. Today I've averaged 44 miles per gallon on these country roads. Road tax is quite cheap, it's only 120 quid a year. I think the biggest selling point for this Jag is the way it drives. I've driven this for a few hours this morning and it's just effortless. The seats are thick and padded and comfortable, which is unusual in this day and age. The steering's perfect. It's not as light as you'd find in a C-Class, it's not as vague as you'd get in an Audi A4, but it's not as heavy as you'd get in a 3 Series BMW either. It's just perfect. I spent £200 on this yesterday, getting it valeted and buffed and detailed, and now look at the state of it. It's definitely more comfortable than a 3 Series BMW. You could drive this all day long and you wouldn't walk through your front door looking like Quasimodo. I think they've got it just right. Prices here in the UK start at 10 grand for a low spec, high mileage manual model, but you wouldn't want a manual Jag. For a nice low mileage example like this with full Jag service history, you'll expect to pay 17 or 18 grand. Jaguar always gets a bad rep in terms of reliability, which I think is unfair, because do you really think that a C-Class Mercedes or a BMW 3 Series will be more reliable than this? Because I don't. I think they're all as bad as one another, to be honest. It's like anything really. Used cars break, they always break. It's just a fact of life. So the best you can do is look after it, service it when you should, and you should be fine. That's really all I can recommend. It's plenty quick enough, honestly. So you could have a BMW 3 Series, which is sportier. You could have an Audi A4 or a C-Class, which have nicer interiors. But I honestly believe this is the best all-rounder. Crucially, one ingredient that they've managed to retain with this model is that Jag, I'm not sure how to explain it, that Jag charm, that Jag magic that I can't really explain. This still has. For years and years I've wanted Jag to make a competent small saloon car, one that you'd be proud to have in your driveway, one that could take on the Germans competently and confidently. Well, now they have. No, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. There are far more positives than negatives with it, which is the best you can hope for. So, to answer my own question, yes, I think you should buy a used Jaguar XE. Well, thanks once again for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks very much.